Attention! This video is for older audiences only and is for entertainment purposes. I do not own any copyrighted materials of this game, as this game is owned by Studio Iggymob, Digic Pictures, and Red Entertainment. Please enjoy the video, and thanks for watching. Gungrave G.O.R.E Review by Wolfdog107. Hello everyone, this is Wolfdog107, and today I bring you my video game review of Gungrave G.O.R.E. Now keep in mind, this review has different segments in it. Might be a bit different than some of my other video game reviews, but I decided to go ahead and up the ante a bit, make things a little bit better with the quality and whatnot. But this one will be a bit of a long one, kind of, so I hope you don't mind. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoy, and do keep in mind, I only purchased this game recently as of a few nights ago, so some things I say in this review might be a bit different compared to what other people have said. And without further ado, let's get into the next segment. Now for the gameplay and mechanics, what you've got is simply going from point A to point B in each and every level for the gameplay, while you're also shooting enemies and objects that you can either kill or break depending on which one it is. But the problem is with this break system is that it's known as the beat system, or the beat count, which is a combo system that acts as a way to just continuously get hits in, but instead you're shooting a lot of shit instead of hitting. And you can use shooting mechanics and melee mechanics to keep the beat count up. The problem is, though, it'll drop very consistently if you're not consistent with keeping it up by killing enemies and shooting or breaking breakable objects, which, more often than not, in between segments are some breakable objects, but not all of them will be breakable, even though they seem like they could be breakable. For example, I would often run into a metal dumpster that normally could explode after enough bullets are shot at it. But the problem is they don't explode anyway, and then the beat count doesn't go up because of that, and then it drops completely, and then I got to restart the beat count all over again. And this is also a problem because the demolition shots, some really cool skill moves that you can perform in the game with their own unique animations per each demolition shot that exists in the game, they tend to never count towards the beat count at all, but they will count towards the art score, which is another type of point system in the game that you get from doing different types of gameplay moves, such as this one here. The demolition shot for this adds to the art score, as well as like some of the other ones, like some of the grapple takedowns or melee takedowns. And they're pretty cool, and sure, they add to the art score, which is nice and all because it adds to the letter grade that you get at the end of a level, but they don't add to the beat count, even though they theoretically could, but they just don't. Even though if they did add to the beat count, they can make your beat count even higher and help you get an even higher beat count, which will lead to an even higher letter grade. But instead, they were like, no, fuck you, we're not gonna do it like that. We're gonna make it to where the beat count and the art score do not count towards each other in order to get you a better letter grade. Now, without further ado, when it comes to the animations and sound effects, they were pretty good, and even though the art score and the beat count had things going down for me a bit, I still enjoyed the game because at least the animations and the sound effects were pretty damn top-notch. High quality sound work, some really cool and badass animations, but sometimes the camera would get a little bit finicky and not let me see the animations clearly enough. But when it did work, it worked very well. And even if some of the mechanics in the game are pretty bad and not too great, they're still pretty cool mechanics nonetheless, and their corresponding animations work very well. and I really like it because like some of the boss fights have really cool animations, as well as some of the animations in the pre-rendered cutscenes, and the in-game engine cutscenes as well. Not all of them, to be honest. But when it comes to the sound effects and whatnot for the voice acting and shit like that, not too bad, but for English voice acting, well, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a sample.
I can keep them stable now, but there are no improvements whatsoever, especially Mika. She is not able to suppress the seed in her. In time, the seed will overwhelm her body. In stasis, I can extend the time to find the cure, but even this will not last. With Grave, I could still use Big Daddy's superior DNA. It may work. However, Mika is Big Daddy's daughter. His DNA wouldn't help her much. Quartz, would you pass me that bottle of blood? Lock it to Grave's chair, wherever you find a free spot. And keep track of his status, please. Well, I'll take a short nap.
Now, as you can see, the language voice acting was okay, and then kind of shit as well, but it wasn't terrible when it comes to some of the characters in that. Granted, they didn't speak much, but it is what it is. Now, when it comes to the game's performance and graphics, there's two different modes. Performance mode, which is 60 FPS with 4K resolution, and then 30 FPS with ray tracing and 40K or 4K resolution. Now, I mainly only played in 60 FPS, but I did try out a little bit of the 30 FPS here with the 4K resolution and ray tracing. It was okay, but I felt like it was a little lacking a little bit. Mainly because, well, it's 30 FPS, it's gonna feel lacking. But overall, it still felt pretty good. And as for the performance mode, which most of the clips you'll see in this review are from the performance mode itself, instead of the 30 FPS quality mode. But the quality mode was pretty good nonetheless. Plus, when it comes to the cell shading, which is what you're seeing footage of right now, is the cell shading of the visuals and the environments and whatnot on the screen. And the cell shading looks good, don't get me wrong, but it sometimes makes certain things look a bit too blurry or even way too polished, as if the vibrant filter on like a photo mode setting was turned up way too high and the bloom was too high and all that shit, and as well as the saturation. It was just bad to look at after a while, and it hurt my eyes quite a bit. So that's why you won't see it for most of this review anyway, except for this one segment where I'm talking about it. So do keep that in mind. Now do know for the settings here, you get 4 different difficulties, which are easy, normal, hard, and gore. Gore being the hardest. And the different text settings, well, you get different languages for the text in the form of English, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, and a bunch of other languages. Not all of them I can memorize off the top of my head. But for the video settings, you get stuff like cell shading, motion blur, and all that stuff. But do know for the audio, there is no controller speaker settings, even though this game has the ability to use the controller speaker. But there's no controller speaker settings, which is very unfortunate because this game could have really benefited from that. But alas, they don't have that, which is very unfortunate, which is why I got a point off from the game because of that. Now, the point and skill system in this game, it's very redundant, I must say, because not only do you gotta use points that you get at the end of a level to upgrade certain things that you should be able to not have to upgrade, like stats, that would be like your health bar or your health restoration rate or stuff like that. You'd think that would be stuff that you get to have automatically upgraded every time you beat a certain stage or a specific boss fight, but nope. They force you to buy it instead with the points you get at the end of a level, even though you could put that shit towards something more useful, such as a new demolition shot or a new skill that you could get for the melee combat. But alas, you can't do that. Unless you want to, but then you gotta sacrifice how many points you're gonna use on the regular stats that you shouldn't even have to buy, such as your bullet distance or your bullet damage and stuff like that. It was really redundant that they did the system like that. And sure, these demolition shot animations look really cool, but why do I gotta decide which one I want to buy when I also gotta decide what stat to buy? It's just very stupid. And as you can see here, I gotta spend my points for the targeting distance. And do note the health upgrade at level 1, I never upgraded it once still. So keep that in mind, which goes to show how difficult this game can get. Which makes the gameplay and mechanics of this game feel even more redundant, because things like the health bar, you often feel like it doesn't exist, because keeping your shield bar up is pretty fucking easy. Even if you get hit a lot and you go down to like 1 health bar, you can easily regenerate it by using a demolition shot. Whether you hit an enemy or not, you'll still restore your health after you use a demolition shot. And it kind of feels stupidly easy because of that, which also makes this character, Quartz, feel very boring to play as. Because 1, this is her only level, 2, she's stuck with melee combat for the most part. She only has like 2 ranged moves, and that's it. Sure, her ice moves can freeze enemies, that's cool and all, and I like that. But that's like one of the only cool things about her moveset. And they don't utilize that part enough. And she doesn't have many range attacks at all, so she's often stuck having to do melee combat only, despite on the beats counter needing to have a high beat count to have a high score at the end, which feels an impossibility to perform. Because if I'm gonna get an S rank, I need to have a high beat count and a high art count, as well as a high amount of life remaining and a damn good kill rate remaining. And I need to make sure I went through a level as fast as possible. But why do I gotta worry about all that just for an S rank? It feels redundant and feels like I'm making no progress whatsoever, which just makes all the mechanics feel like they're redundant in some way or another, and makes things feel very inconsistent and non-existent, such as the health bar, the beat count, and the art score. And it sucks because this game's combat is really, really good aside from those few things that make it very trash. But do keep in mind, besides those things, it's still very fun to play, don't get me wrong. Just keep in mind it's not the best. But some parts of the game do feel pretty good, especially when you're playing as a different character other than Grave, which unfortunately only the 3 characters are in the game. Except for some of them, which will be in a character pass on Switch only. I'll get more into that in a bit. Now here we get to the level design and music. Now what I like about this game a lot, besides some of the combat and some of the other things, like the animations and whatnot, is the level design and its music. Now, the level design was really, really cool for this game. Sure, it may seem a bit generic or basic to some people, and I can see that, but for the type of game that this game is, it makes sense what they did for the level design, because each level does feel different and actually has something going for it, because each level is based in a different region in the world, such as Hong Kong, Singapore, or Vietnam, or Malaysia. And it's really cool stuff, really, because you don't see many types of variety like that when it comes to different region-based levels in video games. But this game pulled it off pretty well. Could have pulled it off even better, sure. But for what they did, I think it was pretty good. But it's unfortunate because there's only 31 levels in the game, aka stages. But needless to say, the level design is still really good despite there only being 31 stages. But the design for each level is really cool because they each use certain enemy types at certain points, or they're just really good for certain characters to play as, and overall really fun to make the levels feel more immersive and more fun to play in, and sometimes even farmable if you just want to farm a bunch of points to unlock a certain skill, or to get up to 30k points to get Bungie, which yeah, I do think is ridiculous that you gotta have 30k points just to get a certain character, which is the only other character you can get in the game besides Grave, who you get from the start. But do note, the other characters that you'll be able to get, like Quartz and Rockabilly, will only be available on a character pass on the Nintendo Switch version of the game. Which is bullshit, because why aren't they going to bring that to the other platforms? Which, for granted, I don't know if that is going to be the case for sure, but who knows, maybe it will come to the other platforms. But for the time being, they're only going to have that character pass on the Switch version of this game, which kind of sucks that it's only going to be on there. Same thing with some of the improvements and whatnot that they're making with some recent patches. They're apparently only putting that shit on Switch and haven't said anything for the other versions of the game having those improvements as well as the character pass. So do note about that. Now, when it comes to this game's music, however, oh boy, it's so good. Sure, their rotation of different tracks is a little odd because sometimes certain tracks play at the wrong time or at these parts where they don't need to be played at all, and they could have a different track playing instead. But even so, the music quality is pretty good, especially right when you open up the game. Blasts off with music like holy shit. And the music during combat, it's pretty fucking cool and makes it feel more immersive and more intricate. And it just makes the game just more fun to play as you're mowing down enemies with your bullets and getting them melee takedowns and just going in on all cylinders, firing off your fucking rockets, or you're going in with Bungie with your rage mode and you're just firing rapid fire with your bullets or whatever. Yeah, it's really cool stuff with the music in this game, I must say. Really, really cool stuff. Now, after going through all that, I gotta say, this game was pretty cool. I found out that it was made by a South Korean developer, and I think that's pretty cool. However, this is a developer that's not that well known. They've barely made any games at all, and this game is even their own original series. They took this over from Red Entertainment because Red Entertainment decided to give them a green light to go ahead and make it. And the devs do care about this game. I would know that because I've done the research on it before I made this review. But I've also found out that they're doing this bullshit with the fucking character pass and shit for Nintendo Switch only, even though they could do it on the other consoles as well. But who knows? That might change in the future, so keep that in mind. But this game overall felt pretty fun to play, but the story did feel non-existent, so keep that in mind. But I really did enjoy the gameplay a lot. The combat was very nice and fluid, and I actually had a good time playing it until the very end. Even though it has its flaws, sure, the very last level has some inconsistencies, for example, and playing as Bungie did feel great, however playing as Quartz felt a little lackluster and was a bit disappointed because I like female characters in video games a lot, and especially when you can play as a female character in a combat type game and they can kick ass. But in this game, the female character you get to play as for a combat segment is not too fun to play as. For they made her moveset or her level very boring, and it made things a little lacking. And that also leads me to note that here in my conclusion, I gotta say again, the art score and the beat count were very piss poor mechanics to have in this game, as they did not work in tandem with each other, even though they could have, because of how the combo system is done with shooting bullets and breaking objects and killing enemies. But overall, that's my review of Gungrave G.O.R.E, and I hope y'all enjoyed. And let's go ahead and check out the pros and cons real quick. Review score is a 5 out of 10. The pros: the gameplay was very fun, combat was decent and fluid. The music was enjoyable, performance was excellent, the level design was great, while the animations were excellent. The HUD was very nice, added life to the game, especially with that skull at the top left corner of the screen. It was really cool stuff. Whereas the cons: combo system was redundant, story felt non-existent, demolition shots didn't work with the combo system, cutscenes were dreadfully bad, the English voice acting hurt my ears, no controller speaker settings whatsoever, and the cell shading was very hurtful on my eyes. Now, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed my review. I know this one might have sounded like I'm rushing through, but I had to do a lot of different takes. I had to re-edit clips, put clips in, put clips out, yada yada yada. But I enjoyed doing my review of this game. I'm glad I got it done, and I think it came out very well. Do note, this game I only bought recently as of a few nights ago, and I know this is a South Korean developer, and this is one of their only games that they even have, because they barely have any at all. 2 VR games and dogfighter game, like Warjet kind of game or whatever, and this game. But considering what they were able to do with this game, it wasn't too bad, but it was still a bit bad. Average, of course, but for what they could pull off, wasn't too bad. And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, despite its flaws and some of the things being pretty bad on my eyes and whatnot. But anyway, my next review should be Grand Theft Fantasy Relink Reload. I mean, my review of Grand Theft Fantasy Relink, or a review of Persona 3 Reload. Something of the two, or something else entirely. And without further ado, I'll see you guys next time. And until then, peace out, Wolfdog out.